I don't mind working here, there, and anywhere, as long as it means getting across the message, which I believe is my mission on the earth. I always admired the way in which Bob Marley carried across certain messages in his song. And I see the music fraternity as a medium through which I and I express our inner feelings, to allow people to know what's really going on, So from that angle, I would say, Bob Marley has inspired me to that extent. But Dennis Brown has always been, he always has a style in his singing. And if you notice, my kind of styling is also kind of similar to Dennis Brown.
Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. By the end of the 1980s, dancehall had by far displaced roots reggae as the dominant sound of Jamaica. This dancehall was far away from the variants that had grown side by side with roots reggae in the 1970s up into the 80s. That style of dancehall was powered by rhythms or instrumentals from some of Jamaica's finest backing bands like the Roots Radics. But by the 90s, Jamaica had been set ablaze by the electronic dancehall sound that began with the 1985 song Under Miss Lengteng, performed by Wayne Smith and produced by the legendary King Jammy. The superstars of this new wave were DJs like Shabba Ranks, Ninja Man, and Super Cat, to name a few. These new guys were blowing young Jamaican listeners away with a sound that featured lyrics that were loaded with slackness, which was sexually explicit material and graphic violence. Foreign fans were still in love with roots reggae, so many veterans moved to places like the US, where they were still in high demand. Back in Jamaica, young fans reveled in the new sound that seemed to capture their reality of guns and sex. And classic Rastafari themes of spirituality and social consciousness were all but abandoned and looked down upon as old school. But as the 90s unfolded, a new crop of artists began to emerge, just as audiences had also begun to thirst after the traditional reggae flavor. It was under this climate that Luciano emerged on the scene as one of the leading lights of the movement that became known as the Rasta Renaissance, which had been led by his friend and colleague Garnet Silk. But with Silk's unfortunate passing in December of 1994, Luciano became the arrowhead of the movement, which was determined to take reggae back to the good old days, uplifting lyrics and stirring rhythms, powered by real instruments. Reggae, for most of us fans, is the music that we resort to encourage us through life struggles and challenges, with hopes that things must get better. It was this feel-good factor that Luciano vowed to restore. Endowed with a lush baritone voice and a soulful singing style modeled after his idol Dennis Brown, he became the champion of a revived reggae scene which had been looking for a prophet since the death of Bob Marley and the decline of Dennis Brown due to drug use and the evils of the music industry. In his 31-year-long career, Luciano has cemented his name as not only one of the most successful and consistent reggae recording artists of all time, but also the man most responsible for reigniting the fire of roots reggae in Jamaica. The story of Luciano began on the 20th of October in 1964. He was born Jefter McClymont in a village called Davidton in the Manchester parish of Jamaica to a carpenter/evangelist father and a seamstress mother. He was the seventh of 9 children, and being the child of devout Christians, he got involved with church music very early and began to sing in the choir. By the time he was 10 years old, his father, who had noticed his musical talents, built him a guitar. He taught himself how to play the guitar and also began to write his own songs. And after finishing from Manchester High School, he stayed at home for 3 years, trying to figure out what he would do with his life. And like many lads who grew up in the countryside, he did the most natural thing. He decided to move to Kingston to find a job. He wandered around Kingston for about a month, but couldn't find anything to do. So he moved back home and took up selling oranges at the local market with his brother. He still had the guitar built by his now late father and would take it to the market to play and entertain his colleagues in the evening after work. The orange trade dried up due to a drought in Jamaica that year, so he switched to selling ice cream. And to help attract customers, he would come up with catchy songs to boost his sales. After a while, he chose to return to Kingston to learn a trade. So he chose upholstery, but this time he didn't leave his guitar back in the village. He would work and then take breaks to play his guitar, to the delight of his colleagues and often frustration of his supervisor. He also began to sing on dub plates for sound systems like Kilimanjaro, and with his growing skills and interests he had developed in music, he recorded his first single, Ebony and Ivory, a cover of the classic Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney song, which was released on the Aquarius record label under the stage name Stepper John in 1992. Around this time, a Jamaican super producer was rebranding and rebuilding his record label. Philip Fatis Burrell had just renamed his company Xterminator Records, probably as a statement of what he was going to do to Babylon. He had also engaged Jamaica's most celebrated saxophonist, the Indine Fraser, as music director of the label, and was now on the lookout for conscious roots reggae artists. Luciano had heard about what Fatis was building and went to audition for the label. After singing just one song, he was signed up by Exterminator Records and would release his first album, Moving On Up, in 1993. In the same year, he also released an album in collaboration with Freddie McGregor's Big Ship record label, which was titled Shake It Up Tonight. The album became a hit, and the title track in particular became a breakout success that went up to number 1 on the UK reggae charts. McGregor, who also produced the album, said that when he first saw Luciano, he just knew that he was looking at a star. From his phenomenal voice, mannerisms, and the way he carried himself was just classic. He also remarked that Luciano was pure, humble, and left a positive impression on everyone he came across. Luciano had arrived, and he released 4 albums in quick succession before the end of 1994. He was now coasting as one of the leaders of reggae, alongside his friend and contemporary Garnet Silk, when tragedy struck in December of 1994. On the 9th of December, Garnet Silk perished in a fire at his mother's house in Silk's hometown of Mandeville. Luciano and Silk were supposed to be performing at a show that same Friday evening at a venue called Midway Mall. He was supposed to perform after Luciano's set, but never made it. It was a devastating loss for Luciano and the entire reggae community. Luciano would rebound from the tragedy and tapped into his grief to come up with the phenomenal Messenger album. Just like Silk's death inspired Buju Banton to come up with the deeply spiritual Till Shiloh also in 1995, it had the same effect on Luciano, and he unleashed Messenger as a kind of manifesto of his mission as a prophet or messenger of Jah. Aside from the magnificent title track, it also featured other great tracks like Life, Over the Hills, Carry Jah Load, and How Can You, all deeply inspirational numbers that channeled his deep spiritual foundations. The album was so good that he's since become known by the name Jah Messenger. In the same year, he released the album Where There Is Life, another masterpiece that has one of the greatest reggae songs ever recorded in the amazing It's Me Again Jah, which is more of a prayer and a hymn than just a song. It's Me Again Jah is a deeply personal and heartfelt chat with the creator, and is something everyone, and I mean everyone, could relate to. So the song struck a deep chord in the consciousness of listeners and captured the hearts of legions of reggae fans in Jamaica as well as overseas. Island Records quickly snapped Luciano up on a record deal, with Exterminator still in the picture as managing label with creative oversight. Island Records booked him for a massive tour of the US and Europe, and he delivered spectacular shows marked by inspired performances with acrobatics and sometimes scary stunts. Exterminator was now the hottest label in Jamaica and the engine room of the Rasta Renaissance. It now had in its ranks some veteran icons like Beres Hammond and Coco T, as well as new stars like Lutan Fyah and Sizzla Kalonji. Sizzla, at the early stages, was opening act for Luciano's tour of the US and Europe and began to come into his own around 1997, releasing hit singles like Praise Ye Jah, Mountain, and Babylon Cowboy. It was during this period of Sizzla's ascendancy that cracks began to merge in the previously invincible Exterminator family, as the relationship between Sizzla and Luciano reportedly became strained. It's never really been revealed in detail, but insiders at the label have over the years all said that Luciano never really approved of Sizzla's overly militant approach to Rastafari. Just like the late Garnet Silk, Luciano was a disciple of the One Love school of thought popularized by Bob Marley. Sizzla, on the other hand, was a Bobo Ashanti Rasta, and his music was exemplary of what that branch of Rastafari was all about, uncompromising and hardcore. In circumstances that are not too clear, Luciano left Xterminator Records after delivering the outstanding Sweep Over My Soul album in 1999. Despite leaving Fatis management, he still maintained a good relationship with the label, as well as a working relationship with the production team led by Dean Fraser. One cannot overstate how consistent his output and quality of music has been over the years. Despite a packed annual tour schedule with concerts on the biggest stages all over the globe, he has released more than 60 albums in his 3 decades in the business. Not to mention the numerous accolades he's gathered on his journey. He was awarded the keys to Kansas City in 1999 and was awarded the Order of Distinction by the Jamaican government for his contributions to Jamaican entertainment. Let's not even talk about his followership. He's got a fan base that is spread thick worldwide, with millions of committed fans in virtually every corner of the planet. He's however spent a huge chunk of the 2000s discovering Africa. In 2004, he visited the continent for the first time for a concert and was literally frightened at the mammoth crowd that came to meet him at the airport, as he had no idea how well known he was in that country. He's performed multiple shows in many African countries since then, the most recent being a series of concerts in Kenya in June 2022. His tour of the Gambia a few years earlier was so well received that the then president gave him a gift of a plot of land and a house to encourage him to settle in that country. Luciano, despite all of his success, still carries himself with grace and humility and is still on the mission that was his trademark when he emerged at the start of the 90s. He's never thought too highly of himself. In his own words, his music has given him the opportunity to touch lives, to meet people, and at the same time be a messenger of Jah. When one looks at his career and contributions to the genre of reggae, it's no wonder that Luciano, aka Jah Messenger, has been rated by reggae critics, industry commentators, and the reggae community at large as the king of conscious reggae music. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.